there's craziness all over the world, and no matter what we do, some of it's going to impact us. There's no way around that. But it is absolutely nuts to be dependent for our most basic necessities of life on governments and huge corporations that are the very antithesis of all that we stand for. I mean, this is madness. Absolutely crazy.
The Ready Life. Into the country.
Hi there, I'm Nick Meisner.
And I'm Lisa, his wife.
And we want to welcome you back to the Ready Life podcast, where we show you how to make your home and your family as independent as possible for basic necessities like water, heat, food, and the power that most of these things depend on. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news lately. I know it's pretty depressing.
Yes, which is why I don't do a very good job.
Yeah, and so much of it just isn't true, or it's calculated to shape or alter your opinions on things and all of that. But there's something that we wanted to talk about today that's just too relevant to ignore. You all probably know about, I'm sure you know about the war that's going on between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And of course, there's no telling who else is going to end up in this war. But that's where it stands right now, as far as I'm aware, is those two. And you've probably seen many of the reports of terrible conditions for civilians in Gaza. You've heard, I'm sure, of the travesties committed in various places on both sides. And, Gaza's kind of a mess right now. And I really think that there's some important lessons that we can glean from this situation from afar. But, first off, I have to say this episode is not about trying to unpack who's done right and who's done wrong and what's right and what's wrong here and all of this kind of stuff. Those are some complex dynamics. And while I do have an opinion, I don't feel like it's a informed opinion. And so I think it's better to remain silent on that unless you know what you're talking about. And I don't know what I'm talking about with the whole situation over there. But what does relate to our topic today is what has befallen the innocent civilians on both sides, and especially how infrastructure in Gaza has been dramatically impacted. And believe it or not, we really think that there's some important lessons that we can learn here. I know it seems like it's a world away over there. And what on earth could that have to do with here in America, where we are? But I believe there are a lot of lessons there that we can learn from this situation.
For sure, for sure. But before we jump into this discussion, could we ask you a really big favor? Would you run over to thereadylife.com/why, that's WHY, and take a really super quick questionnaire for us. We need to know how we can best help you, and getting your input on these quick questions would be super helpful. So just press the pause button for us real quick. Run over to thereadylife.com/why, WHY, and just fill out a really quick, I think there's only five questions that you could answer to just give us an idea of how we can best help you. Then we can adjust things on our podcasts and in our products to best serve you in your efforts to become less and less dependent on the system. And that dependence brings us back to our subject at hand, Gaza.
That's right. I was looking into the situation there, and we're often talking about basic necessities, power, heat, food, water, these things. Obviously, as we've often said, power is not a basic necessity, but when one of your basic necessities is depending upon power, then power inadvertently becomes a basic necessity. And so I was looking at the situation there, and I just wanted to run through this real quick with the power situation. They have two main sources of power there. They purchased power from Israel, so power coming in from afar, and they have a diesel power plant there in Gaza. The imported power was cut off weeks ago when this whole thing erupted. And from what I've found, it sounds like the power plant, the local power plant, ran out of fuel shortly thereafter. And
so they truck fuel in, like diesel fuel in, to run the power plant there
import
in
it
Gaza.
somehow. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is how a lot of our power plants work these days. Whatever, whether it's coal or diesel or whatever, the fuel is imported from afar.
I didn't even think about that. I think our local power companies are like hydroelectric.
Right. Here in the Northwest.
But, we've got a lot of water and we got a lot of mountains, so that makes that more feasible. But I guess in areas where you don't have that, then yeah.
Yep. So there was an interesting quote that I found in a news article where it mentioned what locals are doing in this type of situation. And just quoting from this, it's from The Guardian on the 17th of October. It says, Gaza's two main sources for electricity, power lines from Israel and the Gaza power plant, have stopped functioning. Electricity from Israel was cut off at the start of the siege, and the power plant stopped working almost a week ago, which that's now like 3 weeks ago, when fuel needed to generate electricity ran out. And then it says people in Gaza can still use smaller generators for electricity, but they are reliant on the fuel that has been unable to enter for more than a week now.
Wow.
And that really reminded me of the same situation that so many people are in here, because maybe they have a backup generator and they might have a little bit of fuel, but that fuel can go bad very quickly. And when you're running your generator all the time, it can run out very quickly. And if you think you're going to find fuel in the middle of a blackout, think again.
It's true, because it takes power to even pump that fuel up into the pumps in order to pump it into your gas cans or your car or whatever it is. So no power, then you have no pumps, no fuel pumps.
Right. And looking at the water situation, piped in water was cut off with a few very limited exceptions for short periods of time. And sounds like the groundwater there is fairly contaminated. But even if it wasn't, it would require power to pump water out of the ground, just like it does here.
Yeah, for most people who live in the country on a well, they have an electric pump down in their well, and that's what powers their water in their house. So no electricity again, no power, or no water.
Right. And so that left desalination plants, because, the Gaza Strip is right there on the salt water. And so they have some desalination plants there. And I found a news article where it mentioned this was like a couple of weeks ago, something like that. It said the last functioning desalination plant shut down on Sunday, which was now over 2 weeks ago, due to a lack of fuel, as did the last functioning wastewater treatment plant.
Wow.
So that was...
You don't think about like all the things that rely on electricity for just the conveniences that flushing the toilet in that scenario.
Yeah, if they were on a municipal wastewater authority, then that's your septic or your sewer system is going to stop functioning. Not
going to work anymore.
Because there's pumps, with these sewer systems, city sewer systems, they require pumps, and electricity powers those pumps, so on and so forth. So that was water, and then the food situation.
Yeah, that's true. So I think so much of civilized world relies on grocery stores and trucks to bring food. I mean, what was it that, like, how far does food travel before it gets to our table, roughly?
I've seen a number of studies, and it seems like they're fairly consistent. Somewhere in the range of plus or minus 1,500 miles is how far, on average, your food travels to get to the grocery store.
And of course, if food is traveling, that means it's on a truck or a boat or something that's powered by fuel, which again, if you don't have fuel supply, then, or you can't run the pumps, then the trucks can't move. And
it takes electricity to run the refineries that turn the crude oil into fuel. And, you could just trace it back.
So fantastically dependent on every front.
Yeah. So Gaza is no exception. They've been growing less and less of their own food and importing more and more. Variety of circumstances, I'm sure. Some of them may be outside of their control. Just
for sure
saying this is the situation they were in.
Well, really, it's the situation that we all are in. I just think about even here in America, how many of us depend on the grocery store for a basic necessity called food. I mean, so many of us do, really. And so when you think about it like that, it kind of, it gives you pause to think, wow, we're so miserably dependent compared to the way it was hundreds of years ago when everybody grew their food or traded food or made sure they had their pantry well stocked before the next, so they had enough to last them until the next harvest season.
Yeah. Inspires you to keep at it. This is not something that happens overnight.
No.
This is a process, as we and many, many others have discovered. And so it inspires you to keep making progress, keep moving in the right direction.
Toward less and less dependence.
That's right. So anyhow, that same article that I read from earlier from The Guardian on October 17, it says, according to the World Bank, food as a percentage of Gaza's total imports has risen sharply in the last decade, while the amount of food actually produced in the region has fallen, underscoring Gaza residents' reliance on external aid that has now been blocked for more than a week, which of course is now more than 3 weeks. And says many farmers in the region are also reliant on seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides that all normally enter through the border with Israel, but are now shut out. Once again, the sole food situation, it's not like the article mentioned, it's not just the food that's rolling in on the trucks. It's also your ability to grow food, buying seeds and fertilizers and the things that you need if you're not able to produce those on your property, if you're not able to save your own seeds, if you're not able to produce your own compost or fertilizer or things like this. These are essentials that you need if you're going to be able to grow your own food. And they were importing these, evidently.
Wow.
Anyhow, it just really underscores how we could be in a very similar situation here if any number of things happen. For instance, if anything causes the trucks or the trains to stop running, like you mentioned.
Yeah, which happened not that long ago with the whole COVID thing. I mean, trucks were still running, but there was like a rush on the grocery stores because you just never know. Like if COVID shuts infrastructure down, then whatever you got in your pantry is it. It
wasn't COVID that shut infrastructure down.
I know, we could talk more about that.
It was the powers that be that shut it down. Anyhow.
Yeah, anyway.
Lest I digress. But that was a very mild situation comparatively speaking,
really
because
was.
The trucks were still running. That was just a buying frenzy.
It was a buying frenzy.
But what happens when the trucks and the trains stop running to a specific area? There goes any imported food. I remember years ago when we were making our documentary Urban Danger, that, by the way, is on our YouTube channel.
You really should go watch it if you haven't already.
Right. But we were interviewing Congressman Roscoe Bartlett, and he was talking about this very issue and about how, the grocery stores, they've only got a small supply of food in their grocery store. The only way that they're able to keep keep their shelves well stocked is because trucks are continually pulling up and unloading every day, pretty much, or, multiple times a week at least. And if they're, it's only like I forget what he said, two days maybe supply of food if there's no panic. Of course, you introduce the element of panic and the shelves go bare very quickly. I remember when I was a kid growing up in the South, anytime there was a snowstorm, even remotely predicted, the shelves went bare.
Everyone ran to the store to make sure they had a couple days' food.
Snowstorm being like an inch or two of snow.
Yes.
But if the trucks stop running, there goes power for many power plants that require outside fuel to be transported, like coal or diesel or things like that. And if the power is out, this in turn shuts down a host of services like city water, city sewer, and just going beyond the city stuff, even to the country folks. It's going to shut down your well pump, that is an electric pump that's dependent upon electricity, your refrigerator, your freezer, possibly your heat source, and who knows what else. Flip off your main breaker for a few days and you'll find out.
Yeah, right. No, it's very true. I remember when we had a really bad storm here. It was actually, I think, snowstorm. Maybe it was wind. I don't remember. Sometimes we'll get wind storms. And
I think it was a windstorm.
Power had been out for, I think, 2 weeks or something. And we went to church and folks there were just like, they were trying to salvage stuff from their freezers and their refrigerators and trying to find creative ways to, to keep food, from going bad. And they were lighting with candles in the evenings and in the mornings. And, I remember one of them laughed and said, "Oh, but you know all about that because you live off the grid." And I laughed and I said, "No, actually, I don't know all about that because I live off the grid. We have our own power system. So we don't have blackouts like, those folks did for the last 2 weeks." But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And, just thinking about it's quite an interesting exercise to trace this whole thing through the trail of dependence. You can, it goes pretty much throughout our society. Even if you have a backup generator. So it needs to, first of all, be well maintained and operational, which a lot of folks don't do. It just sits there for years and then it won't start. But you also need enough stabilized fuel to keep it going. So that means that's two things. It's got to be stabilized because fuel goes bad pretty quickly unless it's propane. And you got to have enough of it to keep you going for however long.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're trying to power your house all the time, you're going to be running the generator all the time. That takes a lot of fuel, all that. And you're not going to be running around to gas stations during a blackout because those gas stations are probably not going to be able to pump gas for you. And, don't forget, if the trucks aren't running, those gas stations are going to be cleared out shortly, even if they had a backup generator and they were able to pump, their tanks are going to be cleaned out pretty quickly. So you're going to be limited to what you have on hand, much like the folks in Gaza right now.
Yeah.
So, interruption to transportation is only one of many possible scenarios that could trigger this house of cards to fall. Everything is just so incredibly interdependent in today's society. And this is why we've spent the better part of 15 years trying to help folks get set up more independently, where their homes are fully functional during a blackout or any other emergency. When there's a blackout in our area, like you were mentioning, we hardly even know it. In fact, we don't know it unless we happen to be driving around after dark and see people's lights out.
Or if somebody says something. I remember I showed up at the grocery store one time and they were like, "How are you, dealing with the blackout?" And of course, the store was running on generator, but I didn't realize that when I went into the store. I was just doing my weekly grocery shopping and I was like, "Blackout?" And she said, "Oh yeah, we haven't had power for the last 3 days," or however long it was. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know anything about it."
That's right. Meissner Power and Light Company was still going strong.
Yep.
So, it's not perfect. And I'm not pretending to say that we have arrived and that we have all of our ducks in a row. Some of our basic necessities are in better shape than others. And, we continue to try and work on the ones that aren't in as good a shape as the others. But we've made a lot of progress, and we keep whittling away at it. But, like we've been saying, this doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
That's right.
We took the first step and the second and the third, and we're into our journey. And yeah, we're excited to help you make progress on yours too.
Yeah. It's so easy to get distracted and overwhelmed. And before you know it, another year has passed with little to no progress.
It's true.
And it's taken 100 years to get us into this position.
Utter dependence.
Utter dependence from where we were 100 years ago. That's taken 100 years. And so it is going to take some work. It's very doable. And lots of folks are making a lot of progress with this.
Yes.
But the important thing is to keep moving, to keep making progress. And, like I said, it's so easy to get busy. I know we've had a really busy year, and we haven't made as much progress as we wanted to. And we're a little frustrated. I've heard that from many folks. They're feeling a little frustrated with themselves right now that they didn't make as much progress as they wanted to, and that sort of thing. So the question is, how many more years are we going to have to get these things sorted out?
It's true.
How many more years do we have? No one knows before it's going to be absolutely critical and essential. It's so easy to talk about what we're going to do, but talk is cheap, and we need to start implementing. And so there's some things that you can do that are reasonably quick and inexpensive. Others might take a little bit more time and planning to pull it off. But like you said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins how?
With the very first step.
That's right. And that is why we've been busily working on something to change all of this. Next month, in December, we're going to be launching a system that's going to help you navigate this maze. And you're going to be empowered to figure out what areas you need to work on the most. And then we're all going to work together on implementing independence into your little corner of the world. 2024, it's right around the corner. Believe it or not. Can you believe it?
It's unbelievable.
I mean, here we are in November. 2024 is right around the corner. But we're going to make 2024 the year that you stop talking and that you start doing to make your home as independent as possible.
Yes, I'm really excited about this that we're working on.
I know.
I can hardly wait.
Much needed. There's craziness all over the world, and no matter what we do, some of it's going to impact us. There's no way around that. But it is absolutely nuts to be dependent for our most basic necessities of life on governments and huge corporations that are the very antithesis of all that we stand for. I mean, this is madness. Absolutely crazy. What's to keep them from using these basic necessities to manipulate us, like governments and corporations have done throughout history?
Well, and they proved that they would do that even during COVID.
Yeah, they did.
We saw scenarios where they did that.
Right. So why not do everything we can to make our little piece of this world a peaceful place that provides for the needs of our family and puts us in a position to help others when times get tough? Why not? So stay tuned for December.
Oh, yes. Keep your ear to the track. Watch our emails.
That's right.
We're really excited.
We're going to have the opportunity to work through this all together and going to be able to get your questions answered and get feedback from folks that have experience and, have the opportunity for accountability if you want, so that you can make sure that 2024 doesn't slip through your fingers like 2023 may have done.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you want to be sure that you don't miss out on this really exciting thing that we're planning in December, please head over to thereadylife.com/WHY. Fill out that quick questionnaire because that's going to help us tremendously. It only has just 5 quick questions. So it won't take much of your time, but it will help us a lot as we prepare for this launch in December.
And when you take that, it's going to, enter your name to make sure that we let you know about this when it comes out in December. And also, we'll have something special for you as a thank you for spending a few minutes to help us out. So once again, go to thereadylife.com/why, WHY. And we thank you for joining. And I hope that this has been helpful to look at current events around us and learn from the things that are happening elsewhere so that we can, put our family in hopefully a better position and be able to help others too.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye now.